Welcome to our annual Veterans Day celebration. My name is Shelley Loberg. I am the president-elect of the Edina Noon Club. Got lots of supporters here today. I appreciate that. Again, thank you so much. Welcome. At this time, I would like to invite Mayor Tim Bussey from Bloomington up.
All right, yeah, good.
Thank you, Madam President-elect. I appreciate the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tim Bussey. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the mayor of the city of Bloomington, and I want to welcome you to Bloomington for this Rotarians Luncheon on celebrating Veterans Day. Thank you so very much for being here. It's great to be here at Minnesota Valley Country Club. It's great to see they fixed the damage to the course that I did last time I played. That's always a good thing. And it's so good to see so many friends, folks that I know, folks from Bloomington, folks from Edina. Wonderful to see Mayor Jim Hovland here. It's great to see Representative Heather Edelson here as well. Congratulations on the re-election on Tuesday. And it's great to see everybody here celebrating Veterans Day. It's interesting thinking about this, how through history and just calendar happenstance, how two so very important things come together in a very short period of time in this week. The election and Veterans Day. And I'll start with the importance. Obviously, Veterans Day, we can't deny it. Obviously, we are so indebted to our veterans here in the United States, across the country. We are just so indebted to the work that they've done. Just yesterday, absolutely, and I'm sure there's going to be a show of hands later about the number of veterans, the veterans who are here this afternoon. I want to thank you all personally, from me, thank you so very much for your service. It is so greatly appreciated. I had the opportunity yesterday at Bloomington City Hall. We had a small event for our veterans here in Bloomington. I signed 426 certificates of appreciation to our veterans. We had them come forward. We didn't introduce all of them. It was an open house, and we presented them with gift bags. We had a photo wall of our veterans in Bloomington. Just a way to thank them. And then a lot of folks had great conversations. Talked to a 101-year-old World War II veteran who was a charming guy, wonderful conversation. He told me as a 20-year-old how he shot down his first German fighter jet. I can't recall exactly what I was doing at 20 years old, but I guarantee it wasn't that important and that impressive. But it was so great to talk to everybody, and to so many of them, they were so appreciative, and they said, thank you so very much. And I honestly said so many different times, it is literally the least we can do. It is literally the least we can do to show our appreciation and gratitude to our veterans. Which kind of leads to the next important calendaring event here, the elections that took place this week. Without the work of our veterans, we don't have what we did this week with our elections. It's as simple as that. So many times I've heard veterans say who was in combat, who saw combat, it isn't so much the person that you're facing, that you're in combat with, not the ones in front of you, it's the people behind you that are the things that are most important. Protecting the folks back at home, the work that we do back at home, the freedoms that we have here, and it's just such an impressive dedication to country, to duty, and to honor that it all works together. The veterans that we have, the elections that we have, the success that we have as a democracy, it all comes together in so many different ways. And the final piece of the puzzle that I want to just throw into this also, yesterday would have been my dad's 82nd birthday. He was born just as the Armistice Day blizzard was starting up. He was born in a farmhouse in rural Scott County, out in Credit River, and the doctor arrived at the farmhouse by a horse-drawn sleigh. Now, first of all, wrap your head around the fact that reality is within a lifetime. It's within a generation. That actually happened. Wrap your head around that and thinking about where we are today and where we're going to be in the next 82 years. It's hard to imagine sometimes. But it's also, I think about my dad, and I thought about him yesterday, again, as it ties in with all that we're talking about today. He was a German farmer in rural Scott County. He was a high school graduate, had no idea what he was going to do, so he ended up in the United States Air Force. Spent 5 years in Paris in the United States Air Force. I have his letters home from Paris, and in many of them, he and his buddies had the darndest time finding the Eiffel Tower. Which explains a lot of family road trips when I was younger also. But those letters home where he wasn't necessarily, he knew he was not a hero. He was not fighting for the world. He was a farm boy doing his job, doing what he was supposed to do, a long way from home, understanding his duty and his responsibilities and what he wanted to do and what he needed to do. And then to come home and use his veterans benefits to go to Dunwoody, to become an electrician, to become a union electrician, and with those wages able to raise 5 kids, own a home on Prior Lake. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American middle class. That's exactly how it all worked for so many people, and that's what built us all today. And so those 3 things together, our veterans, our elections, and the remembrance of my dad these days, it makes me just smile to be here today and to see so many people here to honor our veterans and to be part of this celebration. So thank you very much for being here. And now, friends, if you would please stand while our Eagle Scouts present and post the colors. Gentlemen.
Color guard, post the colors. Two.
Friends, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome to all of you, and especially our veterans who are guests today. Rotary is all about service above self, and in the midst of what we do some incredible serving. There's also, we're about camaraderie, something that those in the military have experienced. In our district, our Rotary district, we celebrate the fact that we have the first Veterans Rotary Club, a Rotary Club that's made up of veterans serving other veterans right here in our district. And if there's a home for you, either in local clubs or even in the Veteran Club, we'd love to have your participation in that way. Would you join me in a word of prayer as we give thanks for our veterans? We take a moment to prepare our hearts to remember the impact of conflict in our world and the heroes who have fought for the freedoms that we enjoy. Lord, today we pray for those who've lost loved ones. We pray for those who can't forget what they've seen. We pray for those impacted by wars, even today. We pray for an end to division and hatred. We pray for our armed forces and government. And today we assemble to give thanks for our veterans, those who've served on our behalf, those who sacrificed, those who were determined to make a better life for their families and country. We give thanks for their example of service above self. We give thanks for Rotary and our impact upon the world. We ask your blessing upon our meal and all those gathered here today and those veterans in our hearts. Grant us all your peace. Amen. I invite you to join in the 4-way tests of all the things that we think and say and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendship? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Would you please continue to stand as we hear the national anthem?
I just want to extend a special thank you to our Rotary Brass Quintet. On the trumpets, we have Don Spangler and Jim Richter. Horn is Mary Brindle. Trombone is Ralph Brindo. And on the tuba, we have John Rottenberry. So thank you very much for your participation today. At this time, our Rotary Brass Quintet will be honoring the different branches of the military with the military anthems. And so one by one, when you do hear your anthem, please stand. And I do want to note that today is the 247th birthday of the Marine Corps. Our brass quintet one more round of applause, please. Thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to introduce our MC and moderator today. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce Laura Schultz, who is a colleague and new friend of mine. She is the incoming president of the Edina, or I'm sorry, I'm the incoming president of the Edina Club. She's the incoming president of the Bloomington Noon Club. Laura was admitted to practice law in the state of Minnesota in 2006 and is licensed to practice in the United States District Court for Minnesota. She graduated cum laude from the University of Minnesota Law School And after receiving a bachelor's degree in psychology and criminal justice from Gustavus Adolphus College in 2003. Laura went into solo practice in 2014, forming the Laura L. Schultz Law Office, and her primary focus of practice is family law. She, again, is the president-elect of the Bloomington Noon Rotary Club, and I'm honored to serve with her next year.
Thank you, Shelley. Well, it is, good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to introduce you to our panel today to speak regarding Veterans Court. I'd first like to introduce Derek Farwell, Scott County Veterans Service Officer. Derek is a Scott County Veterans Service Officer and was honorably discharged from the Army. After his initial training, he was sent to Fort Lewis, Washington, where he was assigned to the Alpha Company, 5th Battalion, 20th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Combat Striker Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division, as an M240 machine gunner. He was deployed to various parts of Iraq from June 2006 through September of 2007 as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was injured and awarded the Purple Heart Medal for Wounds Received on March 14, 2007, when the Stryker vehicle he was in drove over a very large buried explosive. After his honorable discharge from the Army, he completed his college education and began to work for the Military Order of the Purple Heart, helping veterans and their families by accessing state and federal veterans benefits. He came to Scott County in 2014, where he is now the Director of Veterans Services. We'd also like to introduce Daniel Rand. Danny would like to come on up. Danny is an Army veteran, having served in the Army for 2006 to 2015, achieving the rank of sergeant. She was an HR specialist in the Army, and she was honorably discharged in 2015. Both of Danny's parents were also veterans, her mom having served in the Army, and her dad in the active guard and reserves. She currently resides in Shakopee, along with her significant other, Jordan, and they are the proud parents of 2 children, Landon, who is 4, and London, who is 9 months. She's a Veterans Court participant, and we will hear from her experience in Veterans Court and how it has helped her. I'd like to introduce Kevin Weatherall, who's a veterans attorney. Kevin is an attorney and managing partner at Jaspers, Moriarty & Weatherall in Shakopee, Minnesota. He grew up in the Twin Cities, where he went to undergraduate at Carleton College and then on to William Mitchell College of Law. He was admitted to the bar in the state of Minnesota in 2003. He is a general practice firm involving many areas of the law. However, here today he will tell us about his experience serving as an attorney for veterans in the Scott County Veterans Court. He resides in Shakopee with his wife and 3 kids. Last, but certainly not least, I would like to introduce Stephanie Menning, Assistant Scott County Attorney. She dedicates much of her time as an attorney for the Scott County Treatment Court, which is a specialty court, and the Scott County Veterans Court. As the granddaughter of 2 World War II veterans, she feels a strong commitment to helping veterans who suffer from chemical dependency and mental health tied to their service to our country. Prior to joining the Scott County Attorney's Office in 2019, she worked for the Blue Earth County's Attorney's Office as a prosecutor. When she's not in the courtroom, she spends her time with her husband, 3 kids, and their golden retriever. Given our panel here today, I'd like to start off with asking the panel some questions and then also allow you guys some time at the end to ask the panel questions you might have that haven't been addressed here today. So Kevin, can I have you kind of start off and tell everyone here what is Veterans Court and how did it come into existence?
Yeah, Veterans Court is a subset of what we call treatment courts or specialty courts, which have existed in this country for about 30 years in varying capacities and are now much more widespread They include drug courts, DUI courts, mental health treatment courts. And in Scott County, the Veterans Treatment Court began in earnest about 2 years ago. Through Stephanie's office obtained some federal grant funding to launch the program formally. The purpose of these programs is essentially to divert people who have special chemical health or mental health needs from the criminal justice system, provide them the care, support, services, and wraparound services even to help cure or treat whatever issue they're dealing with and try and keep them from recidivating and coming back into the criminal justice system. Statistically, nationwide, we know that treatment courts like this have a significant impact on lowering the cost of incarceration, keeping people out of the criminal justice system and from recidivating, and then also providing treatment and are incredibly cost effective. So our program in Scott County has existed for about 2 years officially. And you know, I think Hennepin County's had a program for maybe 10 or more years, a Veterans Court program, I'm not exactly sure, but they've had a program for quite a while. So it's one type of program that we offer in the criminal justice system to try and help people who have needs.
Stephanie, can you kind of explain the various players involved in Veterans Court and their roles?
Yeah, in our Veterans Court, we have a large team of people just representing diverse backgrounds and connections to the criminal justice system. So Derek Farwell at the end with Veterans Services is part of the team, Kevin, myself, Judge Chris Wilton with Scott County with the First Judicial District. We have a Veterans Benefits Outreach Coordinator, her name is Stephanie Butler. Who am I missing, Kevin? Oh, of course. Yep, we have a drug court coordinator, Heidi Castema. She processes all of the referrals for both treatment court and veterans treatment court. And then we do have a dedicated probation officer who, this is their entire caseload, and it's a reduced caseload so that we can offer a more intensive level of supervision to provide those wraparound services that Kevin was speaking about when we're trying to address mental health, chemical dependency, get them connected to veterans benefits when that's appropriate.
Stephanie or Kevin, can you describe for us kind of how somebody comes into Veterans Court, how they might be accepted, what is the process, and how do they come to the attention of the Scott County Attorney's Office, essentially?
We receive referrals for Veterans Treatment Court from a number of people. It can be a community member, it can be jail staff, it can be law enforcement who recognize through police contacts that there's someone with a need and might be an appropriate participant in Veterans Court. Once someone has been identified, they are referred through our drug court coordinator. They're taken through an initial screening process. That name and that background information is provided to the county attorney's office to do a more complete referral. I often talk with law enforcement officers who are involved in the investigations with those cases. We look at criminal histories, we look at all of the files in which that led to their charging. So it's a pretty comprehensive review, and our goal is to target and recruit the right people for this program so that we know that we can really make a difference in changing lives. Once they've been referred and accepted by the Scott County Attorney's Office, we bring them to the team, and usually there's a pretty unanimous approval at that point in time, and they begin participating shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that at that screening process, what we're doing is we're actually having different tools that are used by our team to evaluate people based upon their risk and their need. Because if people don't have a treatment need, they don't qualify for programs like this. They have to have a need, or there has to be a service we can provide to help them. So that screening process is really designed to identify what that need is and whether we can service it.
Kevin, are you able to kind of describe what a typical Veterans Court hearing looks like as compared to a traditional court case?
Yeah, this program, one of the things that attracted me to want to do this work is it's an entirely different type of court proceeding. You know, Stephanie and I work in a world where court is an adversarial process by design, right? There's a plaintiff or a defendant in almost every case. And so, you know, it's kind of like one side versus the other side. You have a judge in the middle that's making decisions. This type of program tries to get away from that adversarial dynamic. So what we do in our program is we meet every other Monday morning. is our regular court calendar. We meet this coming Monday. And what will happen is our team will show up at 8:30, 8:45, something like that. And we all get together before the clients even get to court. They come at around 10 o'clock. And so we all meet and we get reports. Usually we'll have them, on Friday before, on status reports from our probation officer about how our folks are doing. I connect with them over the weekend or prior to that. And then we have a very comprehensive group team discussion about how everybody's doing. We utilize an incentive and sanction program. So when people are doing well, there are incentives. Best practices, I think, are 8-to-1, is that right now, or is it 7-to-1 incentives to sanctions that we're supposed to be using? And by that team approach, we share ideas about how to, if there are problems, what we can do, what we can offer to help people. And then at about 10 o'clock, our participants come in, and our judge, Judge Wilton, runs court very different from most other courts. He'll have the participants come in and they sit together in a group in the jury box, and he'll spend half hour to an hour talking to them collectively and individually. And sometimes there's kind of a theme to what he's talking about. Other times it's, just kind of going to each of the dozen or so folks there and saying, what went well the last 2 weeks, how you doing, those sorts of things. So it's very collaborative. It's unlike typical court, the court reporter isn't there taking this all down. It's more informal. And then if we need to address something more formally, we do it at the end and we go on the record and take care of that.
Stephanie, can you give us an example of what's an incentive to sanction?
So sometimes incentives are being placed inside the Kevlar helmet for a drawing at the end of the treatment court session. Sometimes we give gift cards. Sometimes it's just verbal praise. So when our participants are doing well, we try to acknowledge that and really highlight the things that they're doing well, just to continue to motivate not only the individual, but the rest of the group. When we talk about sanctions, we look at sanctions differently than traditional probation. You're all probably aware that this is a punitive system, generally speaking. Jail and prison are not infrequently used as sanctions for violations of probation. In Veterans Court and in our treatment court, we view those differently. If there are use violations, we try to address those therapeutically. We try to get to the underlying root of what caused the violation and see what we can do to really change behavior as opposed to punishing the individual.
Derek, can you describe your role as a Veterans Service Officer and what supports you provide?
Yeah, so within the what I do within the Veterans Court, a lot of it is no different than what I do in my office. So essentially, like you had mentioned, helping veterans access state and federal veterans benefits, and that can be medical care. A lot of the participants use VA medical care for mental health and physical health. We can help get them set up with that. With mental health and chemical addiction, there's VA disability claims processes that sometimes need some work when the participants come in there, and we help, or my office and I'm sorry, can assist them with that. But then there's needs outside of the VA. If your car breaks down and you need to get a new set of brakes, the VA doesn't have a program to get your brakes fixed. But we partner or work with different community organizations that similarly want to help veterans, and we've helped veterans actually get vehicles when they didn't have one. But basically, we help with VA services, and if there's things beyond that they're in need of, we see if we can find a way to help them with it. In addition to that, I also work with mentors and recruiting mentors for the court program, and then essentially try to pair a mentor with each participant that goes through. That's just kind of a non-court related source of support, and basically just setting them up with a friend, more or less.
And how frequently do those mentors or those check-ins come from you or from the court for the veterans?
It's pretty individualized. There's not a set in stone, you have to spend this amount of time communicating with them during the week or month. Typically, we try to encourage the mentors to come to court so they can have some face-to-face interactions with their veteran. But beyond that, it's if they set up, there's a few of our mentors that I know at a certain time on Tuesday, they have a phone call. And there's a couple of them where just once in a while, they call them up and they'll go grab a cup of coffee maybe once a week. And, there's no, the more the better, but there's no set in stone, this is what it has to be kind of a thing.
Can you explain Veterans Court graduations? How does that happen and what does that look like?
Yes, I can tell you, the graduations are pretty neat. Generally, I mean, they have to work really, really hard to get there. So it's when they have one, we try to put on a little bit of a program for them, or just a little bit of a ceremony, so to speak. But all of the team members get an opportunity to say anything that they would like to say to the participant as they graduate, and the participant gets to address the court if they choose. And in working with mentors, I guess what I would say is the coolest thing that I've seen is folks that have graduated have approached me and asked about mentoring newer participants that come in. So.
Danielle, are you able to kind of share your experience with Veterans Court with us, and what what you have found helpful in your impressions from it?
Yes, I am in phase 3 of Veterans Court. Veterans Court, I was accepted in October. I was at a treatment, and I would go virtually, and I would meet with them every other week and talk about what things I needed to continue to do, what things I needed to improve on, and what things I was doing well. When I graduated treatment, I was then at a sober house, and I would drive myself every other week to Veterans Court and would attend in person. And my favorite thing about Veterans Court is actually when Judge Wilton is giving his little inspirational speech, because it's different every time. We've talked about struggles, or what you're, how do I say this? We talk about different things every other week. So I really enjoy that, and I get a lot from what he has to say, and it really inspires me that this whole team cares so much about us individually. And Veterans Court has helped immensely. I'm in the process of finding a job. They are helping me obtain a vehicle. I've successfully gotten my children back. And Vets Court has helped with all of that.
Are you able to share, you had kind of touched on, right, they come into the system because they've been charged with a crime, but really the underlying issue that's presenting itself, are you able to share some experiences or trends that you guys have noticed as far as the individuals that come into Veterans Court?
Yeah, I think it's no surprise that most of the people that get screened and come into Veterans Court have some degree of trauma diagnosis, whether it's from their service or whether it's even predates their service. That's the most common thing we see that comes in. And that's probably the hardest thing to treat too, but the VA does have some good programs that, as long as they're connected to VA services, we can help them with, get into those programs. But I would say trauma, I think that's fairly universal among everybody who's been in our program. They've suffered some form of trauma.
There was a mention of mentors, Derek. As far as mentors, how do you seek out those mentors to help with?
A couple of different ways. One, I'm the County Veteran Service Officer, and Scott County has approximately 6,500 veterans in it, and my office is the one they go to for help, which makes it pretty easy to bring them to me. We found out that using my office to recruit mentors is a little challenging. There's certainly better ways to go about it than that, but another aspect of my job is getting out to veterans groups around the county. So I go to VFWs and Legions and Beyond the Yellow Ribbons and all the other ones. I'm blanking on them, I apologize. But I get out and speak to those groups routinely anyways about my office and what we can do to help them. And when I'm there doing that, I save it at the end. I put in about a 5 or 10 minute, I've got something else for you to think about kind of a thing. But basically, I just try to put myself in front of veterans, tell them what it is. And I've never met anybody who thought it was a bad idea. So then I start encouraging to come and watch and see come see what happens in there. And I think you'll come back on your own.
Is Scott County always looking for more mentors?
Always.
Stephanie, can you kind of share with everyone compare someone coming into Veterans Court, for instance, for a DWI because of maybe trauma they experienced, how that case might look different to an individual who's not a veteran who comes into court and is just prosecuted by your office for a DWI?
I think the main difference is how probation handles those files. You know, when you think of the volume of cases that a probation agent in traditional community corrections has, their caseloads are pretty overwhelming. And the amount of contact that they then have with their client, the probationer, is really pretty minimal, and it's related to when there's a problem, right? In Veterans Court, a huge difference is the increased contact, so the amount of touches that the probation agent has in the life of that participant is vastly different. And that decreases the number of violations that we see. It decreases, I think, the likelihood of recidivism, that we're not going to see that same defendant back through the criminal justice system. It increases access to programming and other appropriate resources. So it's a much higher intensity level of probation, and the end result is that it's better for that particular participant and it's better for the community.
There was a mention of phases, Kevin. Can you explain the phases of court and what it takes to get to graduate from court?
Yeah, we have, in Scott County, we actually have two different, we call them tracks. We have a track for people who are low risk and a track for people who are higher risk. Each track has phases. One has, I think, 4 phases and one has 5 phases. Participants have to meet certain criteria to advance from phase to phase. Those criteria might include a period of sobriety of a certain number of days. They might include being active and participating in whatever the treatment program is they're in. Might include finding a job. Might include having structured activities. Those are some of the requirements we have. Is we want to have those wraparound services. So we look to have people, whether it's getting out in the community and working, or whether it's they're going to groups, they're meeting other parents or veterans, or we've got one participant who he's active in the American Legion, and he works there part-time, and so those are things we're trying to do. So each phase has different requirements. I'm going to get the timeline wrong, but I think track 2, the minimum time period to graduate is about, is it 12 to 14 months, something like that?
Yep, I have
9 to 18 months is so that's for, I think, both of them together. On the low end on track 2, which is our lower risk folks, the fastest they could complete the program is 9 months. On the high risk, I think the fastest they can complete it is 14 months. And so on average, we're, I think it's fair to say most people don't graduate. We haven't seen people do it in the lowest amount of time, because it is a lot of work. I tell the clients that come to me as they're potentially starting, I call it probation on steroids, because you're going to have to do a lot of work. And so there is a legal benefit, though, and that's one of the things that Laura asked earlier that I think is important is if you complete the program, there's often a legal benefit. So most of the time that legal benefit might be that criminal charge, whatever it is dismissed. So it allows them to keep that off their record, which helps with employment and all those things going forward. But they certainly earn it in order to get that.
And you were just speaking to the collateral consequences that sometimes come because that affects housing and other things. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And most of the folks that come in are really, veterans are a different population than I think Stephanie has in her treatment court program or her drug court program. Veterans come in, they've had a tremendous life experience before they come to us. Our average age is like 30 or early 30s, whereas maybe your average age of a drug court participant is in the early 20s, right? They're younger people. So the veterans come in, they have lived a life before they ever saw us. Many of them in this generation had seen the battlefield, right? And they've experienced things that most of us can't comprehend. And so they're very worried about those collateral consequences. I think most of the folks we have are concerned about their ability to obtain or keep employment based upon some sort of criminal charge. Driver's licenses is another one. They want to keep their driver's license because in the state of Minnesota, I don't know if you know this, if you don't have a driver's license, you're in a lot of trouble. So they are very concerned about those collateral consequences, and we try and help with that as much as we can. Sometimes we can't, but we do the best we can.
Danny, I just wanted to touch base with you again. I know you brought with you today a picture. Both of your parents were veterans. Kind of where you're at today and how Veterans Court has changed your life.
Well, I grew up with, my father was he was active Guard and Reserve for the Iowa National Guard. And when I was a kid, I used to go to work with him. And he would save all of his filing for me to do in the big file cabinets. So I loved going to work with my dad. And I knew from the age of 11 that I wanted to serve in either the Iowa National Guard or the Minnesota National Guard after I moved up here. It was a privilege in seeing the way that my dad was treated by other soldiers. He was a CW3, so he was a Chief Warrant Officer 3, and he did 27 years. So being a part of that and seeing people salute him and seeing the respect that he got from other soldiers and other officers, it was an inspiration. My dad was my absolute hero, and I wanted that. I wanted to have that relationship with other soldiers, and I knew that I wanted to be in the Army. And as soon as I could enlist, I enlisted on August 22nd of 2006. I was in 10th grade. I did basic training the summer of my junior year, and then I did advanced individual training the summer of my senior year. And I then served with the Human Resource Company, deployed in 2011 to 2012, where I experienced some traumatic things that happened to me that I brought back home with me. And I struggled with addiction. I completed treatment court in May of 2019, but then COVID hit and I ended up using again. And I was in a very tough place. I was pregnant with my second daughter, and I knew that I needed to do something different. So I entered Veterans Court, and it has completely changed my life. I now have over 14 months sober. I have my children back. Thank you. And I don't think I could have done it without Veterans Court. They have pushed me and they have showed me that there is a better life for me and my children. And the whole entire team is amazing. Everyone has a different part that they play, and everyone is just so supportive, and they make me feel like I'm a better person and that I'm a good mom and that I'm a good role model and an overall good person. And what was the second question?
Thank you, Danny. If there's anything else that I haven't asked you, I'd like to give you the opportunity to share that.
So I'm currently in phase 3, and in order to get phase 4, I need to be employed. So I'm currently looking for employment. I hope to apply to a few places this weekend and get my phase 4 by November 28th. But I am so grateful for this program, and I think that this program has helped many people. I've seen 6 people graduate, and being a part of their graduation has been a treat. You know, seeing someone come in and seeing all the progress that they've made throughout the program, and then seeing them be a completely different person when they graduate is such an honor. And in the short amount of time that I've been in Veterans Court, I have done so many things that I don't think I would have done. I did a radio station. I spoke on a radio station. It was called All Rise from 620. And before, I don't think I would have been on the radio, because who wants to talk about their addiction on the radio and say that they've struggled and that, you know, they've been to jail and that they've done, you know, they've stolen or they've taken things from their family that, you know, and looking back, that was a great experience. And I know that I've helped a lot of people with that. And I still listen to that. And I lost my dad in 2017. He died of a heart attack. And I found him in our apartment, and that was so traumatic. And I struggled with that, and Veterans Court has helped me overcome those challenges. Losing a parent is always really hard, but my dad meant the world to me. He was such an awesome person, and he was the type of person that he would go out of his way to help other people. And if I could just be a little like my father, I think he would be very proud of me. And I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful that I got the chance to speak with all of you and let you know that recovery is possible, and I'm doing it.
Promise I'd save you a little bit of time for questions. Does anyone have questions? Richard?
Do you have any estimate the number of homeless that are on the street? How many do you think are veterans?
You have to repeat the question. The question was, do we have an estimate of the number of veterans that find themselves homeless?
There is an estimate. I do not know what it is off the top of my head, but MACV, Minnesota Assistance Council for Veterans, maintains a homeless registry. Again, I don't know the numbers, but I believe that it's to the point where they can individually identify the veterans that are homeless, because they put a ton of resources into getting veterans off the street. So I don't know the number, but I do know it's available, and it's not much.
It's under 300.
Yeah, it's not many, but it's still too many.
Josh?
Is this program unique to Scott County, or is this being replicated throughout Minnesota or in other states?
The question was, is this program unique to Scott County, and is it being replicated elsewhere?
It's not unique to Scott County. Veterans Court actually first started in Buffalo, New York, about 15, maybe 20 years ago. And in Minnesota, there are, I want to say, 15 veterans courts, give or take, probably, in counties throughout the state. The legislature last year actually passed a law recognizing that smaller counties maybe don't have the resources to fund a treatment court program like Veterans Court. And it's called the Veterans Restorative Justice Act, and it's a sentencing statute for veterans who become criminally justice involved that essentially allows them to create or to obtain the benefit that the participants in our program get, even if there isn't an available program in that county. It's a way to try and recognize that in your smaller, more outstate counties, you might not have the capacity to run a full court program like this, but yet we want to provide services for veterans in a similar way. And that act is, like I said, that's relatively new, and we're starting to see people take advantage of that. That's a little different than what we do, because there has to be they call it a nexus or a connection between whatever the conduct giving rise to the criminal charge was, and the veterans service. But we went, Stephanie and I went in early August of this year with our team to Nashville. There's a national conference every year that's put on, and there were 8,000 people there who are in veterans courts, mental health courts, treatment courts, and we spent 4 days learning and going to different seminars and learning about best practices and what other folks are doing, what we can take back home that we can implement. So no, it's not a unique program. Like I said, Hennepin County's got a very robust program and has for quite a while.
Back there and
Danielle, what type of work are you looking for?
Danielle, the question is, what type of work are you looking for?
I would take anything at this point, just to have a job. I spend I'm a full-time stay-at-home mom, so I spend a majority of my time with my 2 children. But I would love to give back. I would love to work with other veterans. I would love to work with, I would love to work in a service industry where I could help other people.
My name is Ralph Campbell. I am Mr. Katie Campbell. Some of you know me. I am an addict. I am an alcoholic. I've been sober for 33 years, so I feel very close to this particular mother right here. I'm married to a great mother. I know what a great mother is. I want to make a little pitch. I am one of the founders of Hennepin County Veterans Court with Judge Charles Porter. We founded it in 2010. The idea was these wonderful soldiers who go out and fight for us and are injured and are traumatized and come back and maybe now are addicted to a painkiller or to something else and are treated as though they're nothing. And they're just thrown into jail, they're thrown into prison, and they're forgotten about. And Judge Porter was infuriated. And if you knew Judge Porter, you didn't want him infuriated. And he pulled together our drug court in Hennepin County, our Veterans Court in Hennepin County. The people you see before you today, all of these staff people, are true American heroes. I want you to know that. These are people who are standing up for our veterans. When precious few are standing up for our veterans, precious few are standing up for our addicts in the community. That a prosecutor would step aside from a prosecution job and reach out to a defense attorney to find a way that we can help these veterans is a miracle. And they are to be applauded and held up in our communities. They are wonderful, wonderful people. The administrators of these programs get almost no thanks at all unless they go to the NADCP in Nashville and all of a sudden they are held up and recognized, but usually they are not. This is my pitch to you. I worked in the veterans and in our treatment courts as a volunteer for over 10 years. Here's my pitch. If you know a veteran, if you are a veteran, I don't care how old you are, Jim. Please, 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 get on YouTube, or better yet, call Scott County, call any of the counties that you've heard about today. Ask when the graduation is. Come to the graduation. Watch the 4-year-old run up to the judge, tug him by his pants, and say, "Thank you for giving me my mommy back." I've seen that a number of times, and so have you. Go to these graduations, step up for our veterans, and then mentor them. Mentors are direly needed. If you are a veteran, step up for our veterans. That's my pitch to you today. And give this wonderful mother a job today. Let's make sure she doesn't walk through that porthole without a job. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Afira up to the podium at this time for closing remarks.
Thank you, Laura. I'm Afira Hassan. I'm the president-elect of Edina Morningside Rotary, and I'm really happy to be here today with all of you. I wanted to thank the speakers. This was wonderful, and Danny, thanks for sharing your experience. That was great. Thank you for being here. I wanted to bring up the Scouts to retire the flag.
Color guard, lower the colors.
Thank you again. You guys are dismissed.
Thank you.